You're listening to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director at the Arizona Clean Elections Commission.
And I'm Tom Collins, Executive Director.
From day one, our state constitution has provided for a public school system from kindergarten through university.
And even before statehood, we had over 200 schools, including the Territorial Normal School, which would become Arizona State University. But it was small. The first freshman class at ASU had only 6 students, and in those early years, students commuted to school on horseback. Our schools have grown quite a bit since then. Today, we're talking about how public school districts and charter schools and a whole range of other educational opportunities are funded. Plus, stick around until the end of the show for how to watch the CD7 primary debates.
We are here with Christine Thompson, the director of Arizona Together for Impact, and who also happens to be the most knowledgeable person about education that I know in the state. Christine, thank you for joining Beyond the Ballot AZ.
Thanks so much for having me, Gina.
So, Christine, you have a background in education advocacy and education policy. Can you talk about why education is such a big topic for Arizonans?
Absolutely. Education really impacts every single person in the state of Arizona. When we're thinking about education, it's really economic impact for the state, economic development for the state. If you want to have more doctors in healthcare, they need to be educated someplace. When you're talking about small children and you're talking about access to early childhood education, not only is that benefiting the children who are in that program, you have economic development impacts where families who have a safe place to have their child during the day, not just daycare, but to have them educated, really gives them an opportunity to work in different ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. You've got an educated population, you've got a more robust economy, and ultimately that helps the entire state as a whole. Everything from early childhood education all the way through post-secondary universities, skill development at community colleges, all of it matters to the state of Arizona.
So for something so important to the citizens of Arizona, to our state, let's talk about funding. How is public education funded in Arizona?
So if we're talking about K-12 education, since that's the biggest nugget, really, there's really, kind of a three-legged stool for education funding. There's money that comes from the federal government to help support education. There is state dollars that help support education. And then there's also local revenue. So it's kind of a shared responsibility between the state, the federal, and the local level.
So at the local level, what are kind of the places that school boards are looking for to generate funds for the local school districts?
Sure. So there's a formula, a statewide formula to help determine what each school will get of state funding and what's the local responsibility. And then on top of that, there's something called bonds and overrides. So it sounds like override, you're going over your budget. You shouldn't be doing that. Really, it's silly language. It's the base budget. And you're asking your voters if you are allowed to go over and above what's minimally expected in the community to provide those services. So when you're thinking about bonds or overrides that go to support public schools, in addition to the base local tax funding that's expected from the state, bonds pay for things like buildings, things that are going to be built, and then overrides can have 3 different types of things. You can have maintenance and operations overrides, which are really supporting the general structure of the school. You've got special overrides that could be for special programming. There are some who might pay for an all-day kindergarten program or perhaps special after-school programs through that type of special override. And then there's capital overrides, and those are more funding, equipment, computers, technology, even buses are in those capital things that have a longer shelf life.
That's really interesting because even if you don't have children in the school system, voting on whether it's for these bonds and overrides or for a school board member, it still could impact you because it could impact your pocketbook. As a parent, which I am, I'm a parent, and when I was entering my children into the school system, I came across a lot of terms that I had to figure out what do these mean. And so I knew that I had options from the public school system, but I also heard the term charter school and then, of course, private schools. So Can you tell us, how do those work? How does funding work for those 3 entities?
Sure. So there's traditional district public schools. So those are what you think of the elected school board, the schools that are open to all takers and that have to serve anyone that comes to their door who lives within their boundaries. We have open enrollment that allows people outside the school district to potentially go if there is room in those schools to attend those. So there's a traditional district public schools. The second kind of public school that we have in the state of Arizona has been around for more than 25 years. It's charter schools. So those are independently operated. They get funding directly from the state, per student funding from the state. So that three-legged stool between local, state, and federal, at the charter schools, it's federal sometimes. Some don't take federal money, but federal and state money, they don't have that local money. So they get a little bit of different funding from the state because the state is making up some of that funding they would get locally. Now, the final piece is that private piece or even homeschoolers. So in the past, those people were on their own. If they chose to go outside of the public rubric, they had to pay for it on their own. But recently, as vouchers have been opened up, statewide vouchers, that has allowed people who are taking advantages of those options to get state dollars to help them pay for those private options, either a direct private school or even if somebody chose to homeschool their child, they can get state money in order to do that, where previously they had to use their own private money to supply those resources and help pay for those schools.
Another thing that I think people will be interested in currently, and I'm not sure this is clear yet, but there's a lot of action at the federal level around how the Federal Department of Education will work going forward and how funding, that first bucket you talked about, will be distributed. Does anyone have a sense yet of what that looks like?
Unfortunately, no. And I think that there are so many programs that are funded at the federal level. I mean, there was a program that helped fund school lunch programs to buy more local produce. That money's been cut. It's around, I think, through next fiscal year, but it's going to be gone after that. That's money that was going into schools to help buy local produce, help scratch cooking and things like that. So that's, just one example. There's another example of federal dollars that come in that help pay for school resource officers, so police officers, monies that come in that can help pay for counselors and social workers in school. There's specific money that goes to help students who have disabilities and even profound disabilities, where there would be extraordinary expenses for a school district, but those federal dollars help offset some of those costs. And also in Title I schools. So those are the poorest schools. And frankly, our poverty level is so high in the state. Pretty much every school district in the state has Title I students, some much more than others. These are kids who are living in poverty. And when students are living in poverty, they need a lot of extra supports because their families, frankly, aren't able to provide the same supports for those students. So where my kids benefit from being able to be enrolled in after-school programs, to be able to be part of baseball teams and basketball teams and, do all the things that they could ever, if they need a tutor, I'll find somebody to tutor them. There are other families that just don't have that wherewithal. And those federal dollars are really trying to attempt to meet some of those needs so that those students can be as prepared as possible to be really engaged citizens once they graduate from 12th grade.
We have more on how Arizona public education is funded in the show notes.
And this isn't the last time we're talking about education. We're going to talk about open enrollment. We're going to talk about school choice and a whole lot of other things later this season,
which I'm very excited about. But before that, we have some news on the CD7 special election primary debates.
The Republican primary debate will be held on June 9th at 6 p.m., and the Democratic primary debate will be on June 10th at 6 p.m.
You can watch the debates in real time on the Clean Elections YouTube channel and AZPM broadcasts on Channel 6 in Tucson and on Cox, Comcast, DirecTV, as well as Dish.
Next time on Beyond the Ballot AZ, how to run for office. Thanks for listening to Beyond Ballot AZ. I'm Tom Collins.
And I'm Gina Roberts. Give us a follow and we'll catch you on June 12th for our next episode.